Hello, welcome to the DraftKings Daily Trot. I'm Big Italy 42. He is Josh Shepardson at BChad50. Talking about tonight's action on DraftKings, of course. Some big-time options. Not a whole lot of big totals tonight, but that's just going to make tonight even more fun. Your only obvious stack, you got the Blue Jays really have the highest team total at 4.5. A lot of threes, a lot of 3.5s out there as well. Max Scherzer coming off 2 straight complete games with 1 total hit and 727 strikeouts. Okay, I exaggerate a little bit. He had 26 strikeouts, but $14,000. And I will say, throughout my time playing on DraftKings, the only time I've seen anyone at this price, I believe, was Clayton Kershaw against last year's Padres in Petco. But, I mean, rightfully so that he's got this price. He's going to be kind of tough to fit. I thought you made yourself a couple of tentative lineups with him in it that you liked as some tournament options. And, you want to love him in cash games, but he's so expensive. For me, and I think you agree, and I'm sure some others will as well, $4,000 less for Francisco Liriano. Both guys right around a minus 200 favorite. Both opposing teams, 3-run totals in Vegas. Liriano's got a 6.5-run total in Pittsburgh, 7-run total for Washington and Philly. So look at those two numbers if I have to choose one. I mean, it's going to be Liriano, but like you were mentioning, I mean, Scherzer's going to have a fairly low ownership at that price tag tonight.
Yeah, I'm with you, Liriano. Cash games, you got to pocket that $4,000 and spend it on your bats. He's facing a lineup that strikes out more than the Phillies does, so you do. Both are great strikeout pitchers, so I think you actually elevate Liriano's floor maybe above Scherzer's, which is kind of crazy to say, and just because those punch outs make up for, if Liriano turns in a short outing, if his control's not there. But speaking of control, he's only walking 8% of the batters he's facing this year. So we're seeing a little bit different Liriano than we've ever seen, and I love him tonight. As you also mentioned, I do think there's some merit to using Scherzer and GPPs because that $14,000 price tag is definitely prohibitive to owning. It's big. It's going to be tough to roster, but if you like a cheap SP2 like I do in GPPs by the name of Trevor May, you can afford these guys. You can afford some bats, and you can still put together a pretty darn good lineup. Expanding on my reasoning for liking May, he's facing a bad Milwaukee Brewers offense. They struggle mightily against right-handed pitching. They rank near the bottom of the league in WOBA and WRC+, and they also post one of the higher strikeout rates in the league against righties as well. So May's been very good, controlling the strike zone, getting some punch outs. Don't love his ground ball rate at Miller Park, but you got to like the fact that he's pitching in a National League ballpark and going to get to face a pitcher as opposed to facing a lineup with a designated hitter. So $6,300 feels like a light price for him. The game does have one of the higher betting totals, and he is an underdog. So people are going to be staying away from May, but I think the numbers look pretty good. The underlying stats look good for him, and the matchup looks pretty soft. So I like May as an SP2 if you are going to use Scherzer, or if you're going to use one of the other pricey arms and want to spend up on bats. And speaking of pricey arms, we're both on Liriano and cash games, both like him in GPPs. I also like Corey Kluber in GPPs. Baltimore Orioles struggle with strikeouts against right-handed pitching. Don't struggle in general with righties. They are actually a very potent offense, but Kluber, when he's locked, we know the strikeout upside is of the double-digit variety, and we've also seen the Orioles strike out a whopping, I believe it was 16 times against, maybe it was 17 against Pineda. The number is eluding me right now. And I mean, it's a lineup that can punch out at a very high rate and has this year. So I like Kluber's upside a lot, and he isn't a pick'em, so you are going to see pretty close to a pick'em according to the lines early this afternoon. So not necessarily going to be high owned for those that love to lean on the Vegas lines and the favorites. So that should help his ownership get suppressed a little bit. And one other name I'm going to throw out there. Two other names that I'm going to throw out there. Jake Arrieta, the Cubs. Not the greatest matchup with the Cardinals, but this is a Cardinals lineup that's missing some key pieces. They did have a late scratch for Johnny Peralta tonight, so if by chance he has to miss the game again tonight, that's another bite taken out of a lineup that's missing Matt Adams, Matt Holliday, and I mean it's tough. The hit list for them with injuries has been rough. Arrieta, when he's been great, he's been brilliant. Does a good job of keeping the ball on the ground. Nice strikeout rate, pounds to strike zone. So the ceiling's there. And the other name that I'm going to throw out there is Anibal Sanchez. Jekyll and Hyde pitcher, but he's facing a White Sox lineup that really hasn't done anything against anyone. We've been picking on him with lefties. They haven't been any great shakes against right-handed pitchers either. Sanchez, good strikeout rate on the year. Has had some problems with the home run, but thankfully he's not at U.S. Cellular Field tonight. So the Tigers are actually hosting the White Sox. He's a betting favorite, so you've got to like that. And because the Tigers are opposing a lefty, some of their better bats, their very right-handed dominant lineup, are going to get a boost as well. So I do expect some run support for Sanchez. And I know there were a few names that you like that we also both agreed on. So why don't you throw out a couple more pitchers that you're on tonight?
I've got Wei-Yin Chen at $8,300 opposing Corey Kluber. As we know, Cleveland, lefty dominant lineup, not very good against left-handed pitching. You've got guys like Ryan Rayburn, who's good against lefties. Michael Brantley, not bad in lefty-lefty. But Chen has been pitching really well. 9 strikeout games in his last 3, and he's currently in a pick'em right now with Corey Kluber in this game. So, he's a guy who's been pitching deep into games. You look at what he's done over his past 7 games. He has 5 games where he's pitched at least 7 innings. So, he's going deep into games, getting strikeouts. He's one of those guys that has been pitching well and no one's talking about. So I like him a lot. Taijuan Walker, I know you're a big fan of as well. Angels are a team who've struggled with right-handed pitching all year, and they're, you've got Albert Pujols and Mike Trout hitting well, but no one else touching the ball right now. Walker has had a really impressive run here recently. Each of his last 5 games, 21 or more DraftKings points, $8,000 a nice price tag for him. And then that's about it for me. Really, as long as these cheap guys go, there's a lot of low to mid totals today. So I think that it's a good night to pay for pitching. And I think that my cutoff, outside of your Trevor May call that I'm on as well, is going to be here. John Lackey's a guy I would be considering against the Cubs. Seems like there's a lot of weather concerns, which kind of gets me off of him. But at the same time, if we hear that game's going to play, $7,800, and he had 10 strikeouts against this team last time, as many right-handed pitchers have done. So certainly a guy that I'll be considering if the weather clears up.
Yeah, definitely some ceiling there if the weather does clear up. As you noted, the Cubs are not exactly averse to striking out against right-handed pitching this year.
Yeah, they will go down swinging each and every time. They will not go down without a fight, but that's perfect for DFS purposes. So as we move over to catcher, some options. Russell Martin, $4,200. Mentioned that team total for Toronto. Nice and high, of course. So a couple other guys. I know a guy that you like is Matt Wieters at $3,800 for tournaments. If you're playing anybody against Corey Kluber, you might as well go with a guy that's got some power, and he certainly has that. But I think you're in agreement here with me, a guy that I really like, Yan Gomes, $3,200. Yep. If you're not playing Chen, this guy mashes left-handed pitching. Should be batting right around 6th in the lineup tonight, and he's cheap too. So I think he's a fine option in all formats.
Yep. Another name I'll throw out there is a guy that's been slumping, but has historically hammered left-handed pitching, and he faces a lefty that doesn't miss bats, and that's Derek Norris. He's at home. He gets Robbie Ray. Robbie Ray's ERA has been smoke and mirrors. Look at his FIP. Look at his xFIP, and you hate to just peg a guy as lucky because they're working, but Robbie Ray's been very lucky this year, and I'll call it how it is, and there is some regression due, and I think Derek Norris will play a hand in that tonight.
Yeah, and speaking of someone who plays for Norris's old team, Josh Phegley, $3,300, has been really hot recently. 3 home runs in his last 4 games, RBIs in each of his last 4. If he's in the lineup tonight, he gets Edison Volquez, $3,300. He's going to be one of my favorite tournament options on this slate.
Yeah, chase a little bit of power at the position. Nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely. Moving on to first base here. Kind of a strange scenario here at first base tonight. Normally, there's obviously a lot of great hitters at the top, but not a lot that are in great spots. So a guy that I like that I'm going to try to save a little bit of money with is Adam LaRoche, $3,300. Gets the, as you mentioned, Jacqueline Hyde, Anibal Sanchez there, who, when he's good, but when he's bad, he's been really bad. And LaRoche has actually been outproducing Jose Abreu and at a much cheaper price tag over the past week or so. So I like that savings right there. Your chalk play is going to be Edwin Encarnacion, of course, at $4,600. Righty against Nick Martinez, who's just been absolutely terrible. At times, he's also shown his whatever the hell you want to call those games where he thinks that he's a good pitcher, but I'm not buying it. Vegas isn't buying it. I'm certainly not going to argue with Vegas.
Yeah, nor am I. Another name that I like that I think is going to be your more popular cheap play is switch hitting Victor Martinez at $3,600. And you're going to see quite high ownership with him, but that's understandable. $3,600 is a steal for a guy of Victor Martinez's hitting caliber. He's healthy now, so as long as he's in the lineup, as long as he's not getting a maintenance day of some sort, gotta like him. Joe Mauer, $3,900. Not the most exciting player because he doesn't have huge power, but he is at Miller Park tonight. He is facing a righty, and he does always have a good lineup spot. Like him just a little bit if you're looking for some savings at first base. I also like Joey Votto against Noah Syndergaard. Votto, always reliable against right-handed pitching. Line drive hitting machine. And then Carlos Santana doesn't look bad. First base and third base eligible. Hits left-handed pitching pretty hard. And uh, as good as Wei Yin Chen is, he is a little bit susceptible to right-handed batters at times. So don't mind Santana. And then if you're paying up, there are two names that I'm looking at beyond the obvious chalk play that Justin pointed out, Edwin Encarnacion. I like Prince Fielder in that game against Mark Burley. Burley struggling with left-handed batters this year. Fielder is an above-average hitter against left-handed pitchers this year and since 2012. And even when Burley was going good against left-handed pitching or left-handed batters, not exactly tying them up at a high rate over the last couple of years. So I like Fielder at the Rogers Center. Great park factors there. And Burley, he's been locked in June, so I think you're going to see some people maybe veer off of the Rangers batters. Fielder makes for a nice swerve in GPPs. And then the last name that I'm going to mention, $5,100 Paul Goldschmidt. The reason I mention him is obviously he's a great hitter. That's not a secret. He's in a bad ballpark for hitting. He's not at home. He's not at Chase. He's at Petco Park tonight. But if he gets on base, Tyson Ross has been allowing steals at an alarming rate this year. He's allowed 22 stolen bases in 15 starts this year. 31 in 31 starts last year. And Paul Goldschmidt's reached double digits in stolen bases already on the season. He's got 13. So if he gets on base, I mean, you don't usually associate stolen bases with first base, but Goldie can do it, and we know the power he brings to the table. So, gotta love that ceiling. So, if you are paying down at pitcher or saving money elsewhere, Goldschmidt makes for a worthwhile expenditure.
Yeah, that's a really good point right there with Goldschmidt. And of course, now that he's away from Coors Field, his ownership should be lower as well. So, second base options, I'll throw out a guy who has second and third base eligibility first off, and that's Luis Valbuena. I know you and I both love him. 4,300, got a ton of power. Gets Nathan Eovaldi, who is just absolute. Not word I'm not allowed to say on this show against left-handed pitching or left-handed batters. 421 WOBA allowed. Get yourself some lefties against this guy tonight. Also, Brandon Phillips had a nice night last night. 3,300 should be leading off against Noah Syndergaard. I think he's a fine option as well. And then if you're going to go back to the well with it, if you want, against a fly ball pitcher, Robbie Cano, still pretty cheap at $3,700. And it's not the cheap Robbie Cano from 2 weeks ago that wasn't hitting the ball at all. He's actually putting the ball in play and hitting at a decent amount, a decent level. So I think he's a decent tournament option as well.
Yeah, I'll go speed round here and name a couple of options that I like at the Keystone position. Got to like Jeff Baker in a matchup with a left-handed pitcher at $3,100. If you're looking to pay up for pitching, gonna have to save money somewhere. He typically hits third, right in front of Giancarlo Stanton, so you got to like him. Neil Walker, switch hitter, who hits righties better than lefties, gets Williams Perez today. At nearly the same price point, $3,500, Joe Panic gets Chad Bettis at home. Panic hits left or right-handed pitching fairly well, so I do like him a little bit. And pair of Dodgers that I'm looking at: Justin Turner and Howie Kendrick. Turner second and third base eligible. Kendrick just second base eligible. Both hit left-handed pitching hard. Both are facing a rookie making just a second big league start, and you expect both to hit in the top five spots and somewhere in the top five for the Dodgers tonight. So both should have good lineup spots.
Yeah, that's a really good point there, and I'll be on those guys as well. Third base options. Josh Donaldson's going to be your chalky play, I guess. It's going to be hard to tell. Normally, people like to play him against a lefty. They do have the highest team total, but he's also really expensive. So I know you and I hoping he has some low ownership so we can get some pieces of Nick Martinez for at third base here with Josh Donaldson. But outside of him, Adrian Beltre gets a lefty. Hasn't really shown much this year, but as we know throughout his career, very good against lefties. Chase Headley's been a guy that's been consistent, batting second in that order. Gets Vincent Velasquez, who's been incredibly wild, 17% walk rate so far in the season. So that's another guy I'll be looking at. And then a little bit cheaper there, Brett Laurie, $3,900, nice tournament option, but hitting well. no one seems to play Oakland in tournaments ever. And Lowry's having a decent power season for a guy who's missed some time. So I like him in tournaments also.
Yeah, and I'd love to see him move up in the order, but even if he's sitting down order, $4,000 Pablo Sandoval is interesting. He is on something of a heater right now. He's got numerous multiple hit games in the month of June. He's really locked in, and as a free swinger, guys like that tend to be streaky. When you're swinging the bat at basically everything, if you're locked in, you're going to go on these heaters. We've seen guys like Pablo Sandoval, Josh Hamilton. Do this, and obviously when they go into slumps, they go into prolonged slumps because they just can't help but chase pitches. But right now, while Pablo's locked in, I'd like to see him hit a little bit higher in the order, but at $4,000, not a bad play against Alex Colome. So one of the softer pitching matchups on the evening. I'm with you. I love Luis Valbuena tonight, and beyond that, though, I'm probably looking at Justin Turner, Pablo Sandoval, Brett Lawrie, and GPPs, like you said, and then maybe getting a share or two of Josh Donaldson, because that price point, I think, is going to be prohibitive for people using him. So I always like a great player when you get them in a low ownership situation, and we might have that with Josh Donaldson, even with that big team total.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, it's a big slate, so there shouldn't be many players that are very high owned. I mean, like you mentioned, Victor Martinez, because of his really cheap price tag, probably have pretty high ownership. But outside of that, I mean, it's going to be hard to find guys that have those. So shortstop options, Jose Reyes, of course, same story here. Don't need to elaborate on that one. Troy Tulowitzki's a nice tournament option because he's down to $4,100. I think he's an interesting option there. He gets Tim Hudson tonight. Wasn't in the lineup yesterday, but got a pinch hit home run for all of you who did not get him out of your lineup. So congratulations to you. I know I wanted him, but it wasn't in. I'm sticking with Xander Bogaerts. He's a guy who's been playing really well recently. Batted third last night. Been batting fifth in the times that he wasn't. Had a couple doubles last night. Had 3 doubles a couple games ago. $3,400 for a guy hitting almost 300. And amidst not a great lineup, but a lineup that's been scoring a couple runs recently. I mean, he's been the bright spot. He's been the spark for this team, and I'm a big fan of his again tonight.
Yeah, the only other name that I'm going to add to the mix, beyond pointing out that it is a good punt position tonight, shortstop usually is Ian Desmond at $3,600. He's a right-handed batter at Citizens Bank Park, and you want to be a right-handed batter at Citizens Bank Park, at least if you have any power at all. Does a great job of amplifying home run power, and Aaron Harang pitching above his skis a little bit this year, according to his ERA estimator. So I don't love Ian Desmond because he just hasn't been particularly good this year. He hasn't even been on a heater. He did hit a home run yesterday, so you might see his ownership inflated a bit as a result of people chasing that long ball. But he's in a ballpark to add to that home run total, so I do like Desmond a little bit tonight.
Yeah, and that's a really good call there. Like you said, his ownership will be low despite hitting a homer last night, and I mean that's all you really want at shortstop. If you're not getting a great hitter, you at least need the guy with some pop in your bat. So that's a good way to go. Outfield. We go rapid fire on the top here. Jose Bautista, great spot. Stanton gets a lefty. Brett Gardner, absolutely on fire, gets a wild pitcher who walks too many guys. He's a patient hitter. Should get on base. Should steal at will, score runs. I like the Yankees a lot. And then below that, a couple other options. JD Martinez hitting a ton of home runs right now, crushing left-handed pitching. Gets Jose Quintana. And I know there's a guy at $4,000 that you like a lot. We were talking. You kind of mentioned a little bit about it earlier in the show. So who you got there at $4K?
AJ Pollock. Now, it's a righty-righty matchup with Tyson Ross, but as I highlighted, Ross has huge problems controlling the running game. Pollock doesn't even have to get a hit to have value tonight. If he reaches by fielder's choice, hit by pitch, walk, it's going to be off to the races for him. You could be looking at multiple stolen bases just by reaching first base, get that nice second base steal third base and sack fly, and all of a sudden you've got a nice little night going. And obviously Pollock does add some power to the mix. He is a very good hitter. You prefer him against a lefty as opposed to a righty, especially a tough righty like Ross, but we know Ross is prone to walking batters, so you get Pollock on it, and as I said, it's off to the races. And in that same game, there's another outfielder that I like, a little bit pricier, $4,400, Justin Upton against Robbie Ray. I expect him to help that regression to the ERA estimators for that glowing sub-2 ERA for Robbie Ray to start tonight, and I think Upton's going to have a big hand in that. And then Steven Souza, always an interesting GPP play for me. Righty-righty matchup isn't necessarily ideal, but Souza did actually hit right-handed pitching harder in the minors than lefties, and Porcello's been kind of messy this year. Doesn't miss bats at a huge rate. So usually my biggest concern with Souza is facing a huge strikeout pitcher, not facing a huge strikeout pitcher tonight. So I like the power speed combination there in GPPs. Not as much obviously in cash games because he does strike out quite a bit. But and then I'll throw out one cheaper name for you, or cheap-ish name for you. $3,700 Scott Van Slyke against the lefty. We know what to do when Scott Van Slyke gets a lefty. Get him in your lineup, or at least a few lineups.
Yeah, I'll throw out a couple more cheap guys here. Ryan Rayburn, another guy who hits lefties, gets way in chin. David Peralta, if you are picking on Tyson Ross, only $2,700 tonight. So nice cheap price tag for a guy that's got a little bit of power there. Obviously, you don't love the ballpark, but, I mean, you do love the price. And then Chris Parmalee, a guy that I've been loving to play recently, hitting a ton of extra base hits. Does get Corey Kluber, but Kluber's been messy over his last 3 starts. I think he's a nice option. And then your GBP sneaky play of the night, especially if he has a nice lineup spot. For me, Ezekiel Carrera, $3,100. Not much of a power guy. Did homer a couple days ago, but we've seen him get a nice lineup spot a couple times. And even if he doesn't, though, he's a guy with some speed. He's aggressive on the base pass. And like we mentioned, really high team total. And he's not a sexy name that's going to be included in your Blue Jays stacks. So get him in there as your alternative. Your swerve off of the regular plays here, the chalk plays, and I think he could pay off nicely for you tonight. All right, and that's going to wrap things up for us. Find us on Twitter at DF Cafe, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and check out our optimizer, our projections, our cheat sheets. Lots of great content at dailyfantasycafe.com.